The title of this blog post from yahadblogs.org is From Testicles to Immortal Souls. This is only PG rated. I've been considering my colleagues' ideas about spiritual entities. We both borrow heavily from ancient literature to understand concepts like spirit, soul, nephesh, pneuma, etc. As for the immortal soul of man, we disagree. She says humans have this and continue to live after they die. I say that humans do not possess an immortal soul. Rather, in Hebraic context, the soul, that is the mind, and the body are one, and this mind-body unity is what the Hebrews call nephesh, and the nephesh is not immortal. She goes on to say that after the death of the body, the mortal soul is somehow implanted in another body, and this is called reincarnation. I, on the other hand, believe in the total resurrection of the dead, as is stated in the Creed, and I don't believe in reincarnation, at least so far. I have not been convinced of that. But hi, I'm just reciting my blog post right now. So that's what I'm doing, and we'll start in 10 minutes. But this entry is not really about the soul, but what the ancients believed about the testicles. Yes. As I was pondering the beliefs of my colleague, I also started to read a very good book by Aline Roussel titled Porneia, on the Desire and the Body in Antiquity, 1983. Porneia is Greek, and it means immorality, and especially sexual immorality. I wanted this book because it promised a collection of medical essays from ancient times. And of course, I'm interested in such histories. From the beginning of the book, page 14 and 15, we find a translation of an essay from Galen of Pergamum, who lived from the middle of the 2nd century to the beginning of the 3rd. He was the world-renowned physician in his time and wrote textbooks that were still used clear up to the 18th century. In this particular quote, Roussel describes the function of the testicles from Galen's textbook. Now, I don't mean to offend, but this is the first primary source in this book. And here's what it reads. The testicles are even more important than the heart, since besides the heat and strength they give to animals, they're responsible for the continuance of the species. For they impart to the whole body a power similar to the sensory and motor powers which the brain communicates to the nerves, and to the pulsatory power that the heart communicates to the arteries. And this power causes the male's vigor and virility. When, as a result of continual sexual excess, all the sperm has been lost, the testicles draw seminal liquid from the veins immediately above them. Speaking of blood veins, these veins contain only a small quantity of this condensed liquid. So when they're suddenly deprived of it by the testicles, which are stronger than they are, they in turn drain the veins above them, and so on. This draining process doesn't stop until it's involved every part of the body. So if it is constantly repeated, and all the vessels of all the parts of the body are forced to give up their supplies until the strongest part is finally satisfied, the results will be that all the parts of the animal or the living creature are drained, not just of seminal fluid, but also of their vital spirit, for this is taken from the arteries along with the seminal fluid. It's hardly surprising, therefore, that those who lead a debauched life become weak, since the purest part of both substances is removed from their body. As well as this, pleasure itself can dissolve vital tension to such an extent that people have died from an excess of pleasure. We should therefore not be surprised if those who indulge moderately in the pleasures of love become weak. End quote. I can't argue with the last sentence, for I am sick with love, says the groom in Canticles 5:8. However, the rest of Galen's assessment is based on something other than investigation, for at that time, there were no dissections of humans allowed. So we might say that Galen's ideas about the testicles and sperm being squeezed, as it were, out of the blood in adjoining veins are antiquated and totally incorrect. Now, let me make a connection here to the ideas of Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas on the soul. The notion that a human being has a soul, spirit, immortal soul, living soul, absent spirit, as laid down by these ancients, as well as their ideas of immortality, resurrection, resuscitation, reincarnation, heaven and hell, that we of the 20th century and 21st have accepted as valid, may be and probably are, just as antiquated, obsolete, and illogical, even absurd, as Galen's baseless conception on the more humble parts of the human male. Is my comparison valid? And if so, what might I consider to be a more reliable model for these possibly invalid terms and systems of human spirituality, body, soul, spirit, etc.? I have been looking at the concept of morphic resonance in the last couple of years, a very quantum-oriented system developed by a fellow believer and scientist, Rupert Sheldrake. Perhaps after hearing his interesting lecture, we may corporately recognize a more modern and certainly more accurate conception of the human psychinome, or spiritual system. So go listen to Sheldrake, if you will, on morphic resonance. The point I'm trying to make here is if Galen's ideas of how the testicles work and our ideas today of the soul that go back to those times and earlier are to be compared, well, the first is so antiquated as to be ridiculous. Perhaps our concepts of soul and spirit are just as antiquated as Galen's idea about the male's humbler parts. And if so, shouldn't we find an update? We must understand that these terms that we use are really taken from Greek and Latin and Hebrew, from words that may be translated in possibly much better and more modern terms. But it just dawned on me as I was reading this account of Galen's that maybe our beliefs that go back to these ancient times are not so accurate anymore. And maybe we should consider another model. And for that other model, I'm suggesting morphic resonance and morphic fields. Let's look into it. See if we can find a little more modern understanding of those components of the human that are somewhat abstract and certainly misconstrued. August 1st, 2018. The blog post is at yahadblogs.org. Got it.